Yeah.
I was just gonna say I took a week and a half off, and it reminded me why I don't take a week and a half off, because getting back into the swing of things is wild, man.
It's tough to get back in like that, but yeah.
So she said. Anyway, we're back.
We're back. We're in. All right. Hey guys, welcome to the Warrior Poet Podcast. I'm Josh. We've got Kesh over here.
What's up, guys?
We're going to talk today a little bit about what we're going through with the LA fires, and then at the end, more so how we've been coping with them and how we deal with situations out of our control, because I think that's an important thing to discuss. Multiple fires broke out in LA. The winds got crazy.
Mind-blowingly unpredictable and just out of nowhere.
Yeah, I've lived here my whole life, and I don't remember there being that many fires at one time.
Right.
And they were so spread out.
Yeah.
And then there's a new one. From yesterday.
Well, that's the thing, right? I feel like the news has kind of like shifted gears a little bit, but it's not over yet, and it's still happening, which is...
Castaic is humongous. There's, I think I read it posted 1,000 firefighters is at 9,400 acres in one day.
Yeah. And I think that's also a good time to just say thank you to the firefighters and first responders, because they are absolute heroes. I can't even comprehend what they do. So,
it's funny when you say the word firefighter and you're like, oh, like those are the guys at the firehouse and like they put out fires. No, like they like fight fires. No, like physically fight them.
Full on.
Yeah, and you see these mountain fires, these wildfires. It's insane. And then planes just dropping things over them. I mean, some of these shots have been surreal looking.
I know. You see these interviews as well of like, I think he was maybe like in charge of maybe the whole operation, and this one firefighter was talking about it. I don't know if you've seen that video, but you could see the look on his face. He was just exhausted, because like there's not enough people, and like they're exhausted, and it's about so much more than the actual technicalities of the things. It's like, hey, if there's not enough people to help you out, like you don't sleep, they gotta sleep, like, by their cars and all that stuff. It's crazy.
Yeah, and they're bringing in Mexico came through, Canada came through, different states sent people over.
That's
it's like a small army.
Yeah, literally.
It's been very interesting to watch everything unfold. I have friends that are firefighters, in the seasonal ones that fight the wildfires. And I remember 10, 12 years ago being told about how many people start fires during that season, because it's like a mask of like, they can get away with it. Pyro people, arsonists, and And so I said that to somebody. I was like, man, it's going to come out that there's people starting some of these fires. And the person was like, you can't say that. I was like, say what? And you can't say homeless people are starting fires. I was like, oh, I didn't even.
No one said anything
I did
about
not
homeless.
say that word. I'm talking about pyro and like anarchists that want to start fires because they like fire. Yeah. Because I've been told that from people who work in the seasonal firefighting, like in the wildfires.
Yeah, I don't know where that comes from. Like, and we don't even have to get into this, but like some people literally just want to watch the world burn, and there's a part of my brain that can't even comprehend where that comes from. You have to have empathy for everybody, right? But it's
that's one that's tough.
It's wild, and I'm sure we'll talk about it some more. But actually, maybe I can lead with sort of like my situation on it, and like everything is fine. We had to evacuate because I am like kind of like Hollywood-ish area, so there was the Sunset Fire, and it was. I just remember it being really wild because I was on a walk with one of my best friends. Like in the neighborhood towards the hills kind of thing. And I remember like half an hour before that fire started, not a gust of wind, nothing. I'm not one for conspiracy theories. I don't know in the end what happened and all that stuff, but it does make you wonder, right? And it's very scary. And I could see, I think I sent you the picture, just like out of nowhere, all of a sudden, like flames just rising from everywhere. And then this just... Also, just the technicalities and logistics of it. Like, she got an Amber Alert, my friend, I didn't. And, I think we've all found out that, like, by the time you get, like, that alert, then it sometimes is too late. So you got to be ready and just know what's happening around you at all times. And so, anyway, in my case, we ended up just evacuating, and we went and stayed in Carlsbad for, like, for a week altogether. And that was... I think the right thing to do for us, but I know that not everybody had the ability, the luxury to be able to get away like that. So many people have lost their homes, so we feel very fortunate. But it's been, I just think everyone's been trying to figure it all out and find the best ways to sort of like support one another, because once it's kind of like that whole analogy in the plane, right? Like once you've put your own mask on, like what can you do to help others, kind of thing. So yeah,
I think what's nice is like being from LA and growing up here, we're looked at by so many different people and places around the world as like the most narcissistic, like conceited, like city, and us in maybe New York.
Yeah.
And that there's no sense of community in LA. You guys don't know what community is unless you live in the Midwest. And what I've really enjoyed is seeing the community come together and really band around each other in a beautiful way. So I wasn't evacuated. Fortunately, in Burbank, we were okay. The fires didn't make it this far, which we sort of knew. We have one mountain in Burbank. If it gets on fire, everyone will definitely evacuate, but it didn't, thankfully. So what we've been doing is we've been working with my church, South Hills Burbank. We're very closely related to them. Pastor JR comes here. His wife helps me with a lot of the marketing and social media for this company. And so right away, he jumped on it and was like, hey, we're doing donations. We're going to be a relief center. I feel like the wins were Tuesday. He started taking donations Wednesday afternoon, like that's right away. Beautiful, it was so fast. And he took over the entire church just for donations. People from Orange County were bringing U-Hauls full of new clothing and food. We were bringing, for the first couple of days, we were going into Pasadena, towards as close as the Palisades you can get in Santa Monica, and dropping off just truckloads of stuff that we were getting.
I saw snippets. It looked like everybody was there helping one another.
Really banded together. It was really impressive. And then, after the first probably 4 or 5 days, Pastor JR was kind of like, hey, you know what? We're going to commit to do this for 6 months to a year. Like, the thing about the fires and people who are losing everything is they need stuff now, but they're going to need stuff later. Right now, they're still displaced. They're staying at friends' houses or hotels or Airbnbs. There's nowhere to take a lot of the stuff that we're donating to them yet. So 6 months down the road, 12 months down the road, when they start finding places and settling in, they're still going to need help. Like this is a long-term problem.
Well, I think that something that we can probably do when we release this episode is just post some links that could be helpful.
Totally. I think it'd be great. And I was surprised at what people were asking for, because I've never lost everything, so I don't know context. And I remember asking JR, hey, what do they need? And he was like, man, they're asking for pillows. And I was like, really? He's like, that's what they all really want, pillows. And so I went to Walmart and I bought every pillow on the shelf and donated them to the church. And the next day, JR was like, hey, so I gave him the pillows in Pasadena. And the first woman I handed it to just started bawling. And I guess I didn't think about how comforting a pillow is. How important it is to sleep and relaxation and just, calmness.
I think it's very eye-opening for exactly like you said, like when you've never been in that position. Like I know I had a friend I saw was like looking really hard for contact solution. And this is not the thing that would ever occur to you unless like you were in that situation. So it's the little things that I think you take for granted, and not to kind of like wash over this whole thing because it's not over like we said, but I think I'm hoping there's a weird silver lining in there of like, hey, like you can feel so much gratitude for when you have those little things that maybe we took for granted for so long. So
I definitely hope so, man. So we've been volunteering, and I was thinking about sharing a story or two just of people who lost everything. And I met this woman, and she was a single mom in Altadena, and she came in with her baby. I mean, man, 10 months old probably, and just holding the baby, going around looking for diapers that were the right size. We were able to help her with as much as we could, just loaded up her car with everything we could get her. And she was just so thankful to have diapers for her baby. She was like, I had a baby shower. All the stuff was in the apartment. Like I left for a day. And then I saw in the news my street, and there was nothing on it. I was like, oh my gosh. Just heartbreaking. And then a dads are very close to my heart because I have kids, and it's always hard for me. And I look at dads as such strong figures. this dad came in with his 3 daughters, probably middle school, high school age, and his wife. And he was kind of like rummaging around and looking. We had 5 rooms full of stuff to just give away.
Right.
And he was looking for stuff, and he was telling the girls not to take much. I'm like, hey, man, are you good? I'll help you load your truck. Like, you have a family of 5.
Right.
Like, how many cases of water? He's like, oh, we just need 1. I'm like, there's 5 of you. He's like, oh, like other people need it too. And I'm like, that's totally true. But there's no one else here right now, and you're here. Let me just load your truck up with stuff. And he told me a little bit about their story. And they were told to evacuate on Wednesday morning. And the girls were trying to bring stuff because they're middle school, high schoolers, trying to grab everything they could. And the mom and dad were like, no, you know what? Just take a backpack, put that back. You don't need that. Like, we don't need to bring all these things. We're going to be home in 2 days. Right. Stop trying to bring so much stuff. He's like, we took my truck and my wife's car. That was it. And 2 days later, we drove to our street because they weren't telling anybody what happened if the house was gone. And he's like, and our entire house was burned down. Everything in it. And I could tell he felt so guilty not letting them take more stuff. And they were being so sweet to him and loving and supporting of him. And it was just such a hard thing to hear firsthand. Again, because I'm definitely one of those people where, like, if I watch something on the news, I can feel a little bit bad about it. Like, man, that must be really hard. It's harder for me though. Like, my wife is very like empathetic. Like, she can feel it if she sees it, like in her body. Right. I'm not like built like that. Yeah. But when you tell me a story, like when I can see you and talk to you and hear your voice, it's just like gut wrenching to hear.
Yeah, I think that's what's tough about these things. It's that, like, and you know, I feel like we have the same thing on a day-to-day basis, but especially in moments of crisis like that, I think that you have to sort of be very intentional and careful about what you allow your brain to take in. It's kind of like the same as it can be with nutrition or anything that like goes into you and your body, your psyche or whatever it is. It's like, yeah, you got to be aware, you got to be alert that like, hey, there's a fire nearby, people need this here, and you got to stay in touch with all that. But there comes a point where I also think that it's very legitimate to, as much as you can, also try to distance yourself a little bit to make sure that you're okay, because all that stuff like really goes to you. And for people that like are empaths, like you said, well, it drowns you like fully. And like I think it's very important just for like your mental health to kind of monitor and try to take a step back as much as you can, also to just do the basics of like, hey, like how am I doing in the midst of this whole thing? And I think that leads to actually two things. The one thing that I was thinking about, which I wanted to put an emphasis on, you said about LA and how people think that like, you know, this stereotypical, like we don't care about anything but just, you know, like I don't even know, man, like the way you look, the Botox and all that stuff. Well, at the end of the day, I saw an article that was beautiful as a reminder that people don't realize that LA, for the most part, is actually a lot closer than you think to a town of blue-collar people that all came here chasing a dream. Some people made it, some people didn't. But this is some really hardworking people that know what it's like, for the most part, to struggle and make your way up. And I think that's what we're finding out in all of this sadness, is people coming together because they know how much it takes to get all the beautiful stuff. And so they understand just the struggle. And I think that's also been really a thing in just why people came together so hard. And it's been beautiful to witness.
I love that. Yeah. It's true too. I mean, if you live in California, you know how hard it is to live in California. It is not easy to live here. It is expensive. It is what it is. So, you know, I tell people that all the time. There's hardworking people across the whole country, obviously, in different ways and different versions, but we're not sleeping on, like, not all of us are sleeping on silk sheets in California. You know, like some of us are grinding every day, 12 hours a day. I mean, there's hard work here for sure. And I think you're right. We're seeing a lot of that hard work come into community.
Yeah, it's beautiful. But the second thought that I had too that we were on is also kind of like in those moments where, you know, past the initial, you know, disaster, crisis, whatever it is, whether it's a fire or something else. I think something you and I were interested in talking about today is once you've had that initial moment and that fight or flight's been triggered, and then you've taken care of, once again, that analogy, your own oxygen mask and the ones around you, then what do you do in terms of like because very often there's a sort of like transitional period where like life is just not the way it normally is, right? Like, for example, once again, fully acknowledging the privilege, but like spending a week in a hotel room with my girlfriend and then my best friend, it's like, you know, you share a room and like, you know, you don't function the way you normally do. So in those periods of adjustment, like what do you do, I guess, bring it back to this podcast and while we're doing it and talking about mental health, what do you do in those moments to take care of yourself in the midst of all this change? So.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think you said it perfectly, in like moments of crisis, right? Like after the moment has passed, what do you do for your mental well-being, right? And you know, something for me is definitely, I think one of the first things I did was, you know, it's always physical fitness. It's something exercise. I try, if possible, to work out in some way. It doesn't need to be at a gym. It can be body weight. I
love that.
Even going for a walk, right? Like just something to get my like heart rate up. And it just helps my brain process things.
Totally.
Better. So it's definitely one of the go-tos for me. All right, let's do something physical.
Yep.
Even if I bring my kids into it too. Hey, like let's wrestle. Like, you know, let's just move.
Get some weighted push-ups happening. Get them on your back. That's it.
Yeah. So that's a big one for me after times of crisis. Loss, any kind of loss. You know, I definitely cope better by doing something physical.
Right. Right. Yeah, I agree. I think I'm the same. I very much, whether it's going for a run or like doing some push-ups or whatever it is, I think it's, because it's, I think something that maybe is not spoken about enough is when you go through a time of crisis and a time where you feel maybe a little hopeless, because, you know, for example, a fire, like it's almost like it's easy to feel hopeless in terms of like, what can I do? Like other than kind of like wait it out and like, you know, so I think very much our body is being related to our psyche and our mind. Like it's easy to go into these things that's, like, for example, your posture, it's easy to kind of like sink into this defeated sort of like thing where like all of a sudden you're not in control and therefore your body takes a toll. You start like, you know, feeling that. So to almost flip the script and then go exert control over things that you can control, I think helps you get out of that sort of like tough spot and is very much instrumental into getting out of the hole and making sure that you're okay. So getting physical, I think mindfulness, we go back to that all the time, like just doing some breathing, asking yourself whether it's a body scan or literally just going, hey, I need to take 5 deep breaths right now. I probably don't want to. I'll probably find a lot of resistance, but I know it will do me good. Once again, taking care of yourself first. That is really essential. And I think finding little moments of joy if you can, and if you're in a position, obviously, to do that. For example, for us, it was, you know, like we were feeling obviously a lot of the sadness around people that we knew having lost a lot of things. And so at nighttime when like, you know, we make the conscious decision of like, hey, okay, no more screen for today. Cause like, you know, all day long we've been bombarded by like all this loss and it's really difficult. And like, we got to unplug a little bit. Playing a card game. Yeah. Like, you know, playing a card game or like, you know, one night this hotel was hosting like a, you know, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but kind of like a shitty karaoke night. And like, you know, like just kind of like taking part in that and like doing things that you wouldn't normally do, but that, you know, are essential. It makes a huge, huge difference. So
I think that's a big one is, you know, somehow being around others in some way, whether it's loved ones or strangers. Community. That's a great one. And I think that's something that, you know, we go to, and that, I'll be honest, you know, is new for me because I'm very used to the like man up on your own, handle it yourself. You don't need anybody or anything. Like that's definitely how I was for a very long time. Nothing phases me. You know? But now as a dad, you know, I have a daughter and a son and my wife, and something that I acknowledge that was different this crisis and this time where we had to think, all right, do we need go bags? Who do we know that needs help? Do we need to bring people to our house? We're okay. Was my family. Like it was very much, you know, I can go to the gym tomorrow. Right. It's there. I can go there. It's cool. Tonight, the kids need me to be home. We need to watch a movie and have popcorn and same thing as you, no phones. I don't need the Fire app on all the time. Put the phones down. We watched Sonic 2 as a family and just laughed and just, you know, the next day, okay, you know, the kids went to bed. My wife went back on the phone to check on it. But we took that time as a family unit, and it was nice, and it felt very natural. I didn't have to force it. That like I can handle everything alone brain. It really didn't turn on this time, which was nice.
But I like what you're saying there. I think and I think we can probably afford to do a whole podcast on that. I'm big, as I've told you, into Stoicism, and it's this idea, this old school of philosophy that revolves around focusing on what you can control. Bad things are bound to happen to just anybody, but it's how you react to those things that defines you. And in terms of crisis like that, it's kind of everything we were saying, just being intentional about the things that you can control, because there is so much you can't control.
Yeah.
And especially when it comes to your mental health, I think that's definitely one way to sort of like just navigate all of this.
Totally.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's good to do, that check-in with yourself, find something you can do that helps you cope when you need to.
Yep.
Community, like we said. And also, too, it'd be kind of cool. It'd be cool to hear from people in comments, like, what did you do? Or what do you do?
100%.
In times of crisis. Again, not in the moment itself. After the moment has sort of settled, though, what are you doing for you?
Yeah, big time.
Just to see what people kind of do, and we only grow and learn from each other, so totally. I'm hoping we get some good ones, because then we can adopt them and be like, you know what, I like that one, I'm gonna put that in my pocket.
So hit us up in the comments and let us know what you guys think, and what you guys do. That would be very cool to see that.
All right, man. Well, you got a big month coming up. We're gonna keep doing the podcast. You got a big month coming up. And so we'll be back next time. It's Kesh and Josh. Follow us on social media. Warrior Poet Podcast will be up. We will get that up. The channel and the
we're getting the machine going.
Yeah, we're getting the machine going. Bear with us, but we're working. Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you next time.
See you guys next time.